Do you want to watch a newer NoteSchool member talk about her first deal? Stay tuned. Well, you are in for a treat today. Welcome to NoteSchool TV. We are here live every Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time. So make sure you're joining us. Like and subscribe to the channel. No, seriously, go ahead, take a minute, go like the videos and subscribe to the channel. Just really short, really easy. Awesome. And then click that bell notification. That notifies you that, hey, we are live, and you'll get a notification on your phone or on your device saying, come on, jump in and participate with us. Bring your questions, bring your comments, say hello. We always love to hear from those of you who are joining us every single week. And then we always have an after party. So after we have an amazing show, we always stick around at the end, hang out a little bit longer, and just shoot the breeze, answer questions that you didn't get answered, or just say hi and just talk about the business, right? If you're newer to Notes, or you're even newer to NoteSchool and you're trying to learn a little bit more, go to noteschool.com/TV to learn a little bit more and, take that next step, whatever that needs to look like for you. This is going to be a very fun show. I'm super excited. But before we get into it, I want to talk about Mr. Joe Varnador and the news. Mr. Joe Varnador.
Hey, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. Is there some crazy, amazing news happening right now?
Well, you know what? It's always interesting, right? And it is no less interesting in the world this week than it was last week. That's for sure.
Sounds right.
So let's jump right into it. So here's a big question. Why millions of prospective borrowers are stuck in no man's land. And this is an article from, it was from yesterday in Housing Wires. It's in the wake of 2020. Uncertain income equals tightened underwriting standards. So guys, what does that mean? Well, that means that millions of Americans, I think it's about 8.5 million Americans, are still unemployed. And when employment is uncertain, so is income. So what does that mean? Well, that means that when income is uncertain, lenders don't want to lend to prospective borrowers. And this one's pretty shocking as well, right? The average FICO score for all types of loans is north of 750, and according to ICE Mortgage Technologies, several lenders and whose credit overlays, these are special COVID overlays that lay over regular underwriting guidelines, require applicants to have closer to a 780 credit score.
Wow.
And obviously the average U.S. FICO is around 711. So, well, Brian, here's the thing. There's never been a better time to work with penalty box buyers. Those just missed buyers out there that we know that there are millions of, right?
Yeah.
So here are the most competitive markets in the United States at this point. Number one kind of makes sense. It's San Jose. San Francisco is number two. Raleigh, North Carolina. We have a lot of NoteSchool students in Raleigh. Number three, crazy hot market. Number four is Portland, San Diego. Number six is Los Angeles. Number seven, Boston. And look at that. Who would have thought number eight would be Kansas City, Missouri, right? New York, and then Minneapolis and Milwaukee tie for the number 10 spot. So very, very crazy markets out there. And that's according to LendingTree. And then further findings from LendingTree shows that the average down payment in the top 11 most competitive metros is 21%. For the least competitive 12 metros, that number is 19%. Guys, we have been saying this for, a little over a year now. High credit scores are required, and the average down payment, let's just call that an average of 20%. And then, obviously, as a result, the most competitive buyers will generally be able to put more down on a home. which means in the bidding wars that are going on out there, that the better the credit, the more down, obviously, the more easily somebody can qualify for a loan. And then finally, Brian, here's the question. Guys, and this is just kind of a human interest story, right? So who is the biggest private owner of farmland in the United States? Brian, would you hazard a guess on that?
Oh my gosh, of farmland specifically, I have no idea.
Well, it's going to surprise you. That would be none other than Mr. Bill Gates. Yeah. Bill is buying up farmland. He owns 242,000 acres at this point. And Brian, do you know who the largest individual private landowner is in the U.S.?
Who's that?
That would be Mr. Ted Turner, right? But he owns just, mountain land and all of that. But Bill owns 242,000. Bill and I are on a first name basis.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, that land is worth more than $690 million. And he does that to help support sustainable farming. So, guys, just a little human interest there at the end. And so we're going to jump over and we are going to introduce our guest today, Brian. But first of all, let's introduce our founder, right, of Note School, our head visionary, Mr. Eddie Speed.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good.
We're good. How about you?
Oh, I don't know how I could be better. My son got married last weekend.
Yeah, he did. And
beautiful wedding down in Louisiana, and married a fine young lady, and she's from a great family, and so we're feeling blessed today, Joe.
I know, right? And Brian, we just saw a picture of Eddie dancing.
That's right. We did. And he was really getting down, I'd say.
He was shaking a leg, dude. Let me tell you. So enough about us, guys. Let's introduce our guest here. So this young lady is from Houston, Texas, and she is, she is amazing. She's got this big, beautiful smile on her face all the time. And guys, she was in one of the last live classes that we were able to do last year, right? And so I want to bring her on. She's a note investor. She's has a commercial and residential real estate license. She has a passion for empowering folks, especially women, on financial literacy. Miss Jamila Tunu.
Hello.
How are you?
Smile. I told you guys, didn't I?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, Eddie, I'm going to kind of drop in. We're going to pull up a PowerPoint presentation. We're going to talk about, Bill. But first of all, let's talk with Jamila for a minute, and I'll let you do that, and I'll get ready for the rest of the show. Okay.
Well, we get to know students when they come see us at events, but when they do the membership with us and they do stuff on a longer term basis, we really get to know them, right? Mm-hmm. And you and I have had a lot of fun together, right?
Oh, yes.
And I like to laugh, and obviously you can see that Jamila does too. So that it makes a good combination. And we thought this was a great case study because it's about your first deal.
Yeah.
And in the note base, and it's impressive. So you did good, and but congratulations on that.
Thank you. Love it.
Yeah. And all right, so we'll pull up the PowerPoint here, and let's just talk about it a little bit. So you bought this note, correct?
I did. I bought that one. Uh-huh.
Do you live in Zanesville, Ohio?
Far from it. I had to look up where it was.
A Note School rock star student named Justin Wagner lives in that town.
Does he? Okay.
You know that? Yes, sir. He's done over 400 assets. Great guy, and he and his family live in Zanesville, Ohio. So I actually know about Zanesville, Ohio. It's about an hour from Columbus, Ohio. But I know about it only because Justin lived there. Yeah. So pretty nice house, right?
Yeah, a little simple, nothing extravagant, but it's a roof over someone's head.
And a lot of times if people live in a certain market, they can't wrap their mind around a $43,000 house.
Right.
This is just in a small market, and it's just not, it doesn't have Phoenix or California pricing, right?
Exactly.
All right, so that's the house, and that house secured your loan, right? It was, you didn't buy the house, you bought what?
I bought the note, the paper.
Exactly. So you bought the loan secured by the house, and you were the bank. Loan balance, it was almost a 10% interest rate note. So it's kind of typical of seller financing. A lot of times there'll be a little higher interest rate.
Right.
And you bought this note at a discount for $27,830.
That's correct.
And the broker price opinion, BPO, right, said the house was worth 43. So that was the price. That was what that property was worth. You paid 27, so you have a pretty good cushion factor. God forbid something go wrong.
Yeah.
And this thing had a pretty solid pay history, right?
Real nice pay history.
Right. 80, are you kidding me? They had made 80 payments before you bought the note?
Yes, and on time.
Well, that's a pretty good indication of how things are going to look going forward, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a good redeeming factor. There were 280 payments remaining, and you bought those. And so one of the strategies that we talk about a lot, which is really common in the mortgage business, but it's not common to people unless they're taught this, is that when you buy this note, now you now own an asset, right?
Right.
In other words, if you owned a rent house, you own the rent house is an asset. If you owned a boat, you own an asset, right?
Right.
If you owned jewelry, you own an asset. Like so, a note is an asset. It is secured by real estate, but you're not necessarily buying the real estate. You're buying the loan secured by the real estate.
Right.
And one of the concepts is, well, Jamila, you could go out and just borrow money against this asset.
Yep. Exactly.
Say it ain't so.
Say it ain't so, but I would say it is so.
So this is a little template that we use in Excel. You can see the top line there. It says that the loan balance and all of those loan characteristics. And then you borrowed money against the note, and you borrowed more than you paid for the note.
I did.
Is that true?
That is true.
So you didn't have to borrow just the amount you paid for the note. You over borrowed a little bit.
I did because of that cushion you showed a little earlier. I had a little cushion to do so. Yeah.
And you're kind of new in the business, and you said, look, I need a little eating money, right?
Right.
That's okay. 3 years into this business, or like I've been doing it for 40 years, maybe you don't need to do that anymore. But when you get started, there is a way to do it. So you just took this note and you said, here's a note, Mr. Lender. I'm going to pledge this note to you as collateral, right? How'd you find this guy to lend you the money?
Well, he was actually in my sphere. He was one of the guys. He was actually one of my investors looking for an investment property. But then I found out he had some money sitting in a solo K doing absolutely nothing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, let's deploy it. So at first it started out with a little bit, I'm just going to try. But then he ended up investing 30 grand with me, and we'll probably be doing another deal here soon.
So he lent you 30 grand against the note. You signed a note, 30,000, 6% interest. And then you're making a little bit of cash flow a year on it, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit. Most of my money's going to be on the tail end on this deal.
So your loan with him will pay out quicker than the whole loan will pay out.
Exactly.
How long does it take for you to pay him off?
I've got 176 months with him. So, and then I get the rest of those 117 payments, I think it is afterwards, or 114, I think.
100, you'll own it free and clear. You made some money up front. You're giving him most of cash flow. You're keeping a little bit, kind of a cushion factor. then he's going to get paid out and you're going to have, just call it 100 months left.
Right.
Right. And so that's residual income, right?
Beautiful. Yes.
Now you own your own bank.
Right.
Because here's what's happening. What happened is you own your own bank and you did what the bank did. You found an asset that has a higher return.
Mm-hmm.
And then you took somebody else's money at a lower return and you're making profit every month because my bank will take your money and give and basically almost pay you nothing for it. And then I go and want to borrow something from the bank and they want to charge me interest.
Right.
In other words, didn't they kind of just loan me your money?
They do it every day, Eddie, every single probably second going on.
That's great. But yeah. I want to talk about this guy that lent you the money.
Okay.
Right? Because you said that he came to you really with the thought in mind of initially kind of looking for a rental.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we talk about the burnout landlord factor a lot, right? And we're not saying every landlord's burnt out, right?
Right.
But there certainly are burnout landlords.
There are some.
But the other problem is today there is a shortage of properties people can buy and they're paying a premium price.
Oh, yes.
So now all of a sudden there's a bleed over. You think that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Mm-hmm.
So talk about that.
Well, for him, for his situation, he's an entrepreneur and very, very, very busy. And for him to have to add another active investment into his day was just not an option for him. And so for him to be able to get a passive, because it's passive, he just collects a check every month. So for him to get a passive investment with a 6% return that's actually secured by something, I told him, go find another one. And if you don't find it, come back to me. He didn't do that. He trusted me, but that was just what I said. And he said, let's do it. So it was the major thing. He didn't have time. He just really didn't.
All right. So Joe, click on down just to make sure that we can see kind of the money and you've got $30,000 in income over time in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the total profit, Joe, just click that so people can kind of see it. I mean, look, a little old $32,000 note, you got profit of $33,000.
And ask me how much I paid for it myself out of pocket.
You sure that you don't want to sell this note back to me?
Oh, yes, I love it. That's why I love notes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're working the business from a number of angles, and I really appreciate that because you're also working the real estate investor side where you can buy properties on terms, and you've worked a couple of really good deals, and then you've had a couple of deals that have kind of fallen apart. And I want to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when a deal falls apart? What do you do?
Next, we just keep moving, honestly.
Exactly. Don't ever base your business on one deal, right?
No, we go next. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's some great advice. So Joe, come on with me here. We have had a great time. Yeah, we've had a great time. We call this every week in our thing, the deal lab, right? So we've had some fun time cutting up and talking about different deals. And so, by the way, you know, I don't even remember when you bought this asset, right? I mean, I'm sure you asked us maybe some stuff about it, but I remember you're talking about this guy, right? And you had some other business relations with him. We won't get off into all of that, but you kind of knew him. And he definitely was it's the landlord factor. And when you really snapped in and started understanding the landlord factor, that made a difference, right?
Yeah, it's really just understanding the opportunity and being a solution provider. And that's really what I consider myself to be, a solution provider for investors, because you know, I am in the real estate business, but everybody does not have the time to, you know, actively invest money. I found is not an issue, but it's more where to put it. And so that's kind of where it happened with him. It just wasn't the real estate investing, physical active was not a solution for him. And so I'm glad I added this to my repertoire, because now I had that to offer as an alternative for my investors.
And you know, Jamila, you said something here. We were doing a huddle call or whatever here a couple months ago, and you said, and somebody said, well, Jamila, how did you find this investor, right? And I love what you said. You said, you know what? I just sat down here months ago and I just wrote down all of my, you know, people that I know. And you said, I just got on the phone and I had a conversation with them. Hey, how you doing? I hadn't seen you in a year. You know, what's been going on? Right. Mm-hmm. And what do they say to you when you say what's been going on? After they get through talking about themselves, they then ask you what?
Yeah, what you up to? What are you up to? Yeah.
and then that just is a perfect lead in into what, you know, I'm in the note business at this point, right? Yeah. And then that gives you that opportunity. I love that.
Yeah, it was twofold, you know, really getting into it. The first one was I just told everybody I was doing it. Look, this is what I'm doing. I'm a note investor. I'm a note investor. I'm a note investor. And then everybody, a lot of times, what are notes? What are those? What are those? And so I get that. So I'm like, I'm glad you asked. So that was one thing. So don't be a secret investor. And we joke about that all the time, where people that get into real estate have become secret agents. Like, don't be a secret investor. So tell everybody you know. And then number two, because I just like doing presentations, I started having, I started doing like note conversations, and I was doing that once a week, and it just seemed like I would have it with a couple of people on there, and then the next time they tell their friends and family about it, because again, it was just a new concept for people, and they just kept coming. They kept coming, and I'm still getting calls from that series that I did. I think I did about 4 or 6 of them, and I'm still getting calls from those now about people that I'm still getting ready. You know, they're wanting to know if this is the best solution for them. So it is. You just got to tell people about it. I just tell people.
You know, I'm going to steal that, by the way. I wrote it down. If you saw me writing something down, you know, I'm going to tell everybody, don't keep it a secret as to what you do, right?
Yeah, don't keep it a secret.
That's great. You know, we'll talk about this in the after party a little bit, because I want to dig off into a little bit about what those presentations are like. You know, people are sometimes scared to start, and I just wanted to kind of get your perspective of what it was like to start doing that. So we'll talk about that in the after party for sure. Okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
Joe, what would you ask Jamila that just like the parting thought? What would that be?
So, you know, you said something a minute ago to Eddie when we were looking at your case study there. You said, and Eddie asked me how much money I have invested in that deal, right? And I think we all know now that you had 0 money invested in that.
Yeah.
Did you think a year ago that you could actually make an investment like that? I mean, really,
No, I mean, for me to invest 0 of my dollars, and even though I'm getting it later, but it's an asset that I'm going to have $30,000. I mean, not 3,000, not 300, but $30,000 off of 0 of my money. Amazing. Like, that's just, no, I'm amazed. I love it.
I want to give you the opportunity to, you have a passion for empowering others that don't know as much about, as being kind of a coach for folks that just never had the opportunity to learn how to even, anything about finances. And I know you do that as well. And if you want to say something about that, you feel free to do so real quick.
Well, thank you, Joe. What I do, honestly, is a financial education. It's called Financial Legacy Building for Women Investors. You can look me up on Facebook and do that. I focus on women just because I needed a target market. I'm a woman, and so I know what they go through. So I do financial legacy building. And so we go over the basics of what, getting into, a lot of people don't know where to start when it gets to investing and building a legacy. And a lot of people just aren't ready because their foundation is not in place. And so that's one of the things that I do, is that I just help them to understand what foundational things need to be put in place in order for them to be able to invest.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's the foundational piece that I'm finding a lot of people, that this group, 80% of the people in my group are not investing. And I wanted to know why. And I had a solution for that. And again, my goal is being a solution provider for anybody that comes in contact with me, be a solution provider. And so that was a hole that needed a void that needed to be filled. So I'm gonna fill that. And what that does is that fills my pipeline for people that can invest with me later. So I'm getting you ready. So that all ties in together.
That's right. And notes really are the perfect piece to do that with. And, if you guys didn't have a chance to watch, you've met Martha Speed, and we had Martha on about a month ago. And if you want to learn more about legacy investing and Martha building that legacy for Eddie and Martha and the family, that's a good thing. And we appreciate you saying that. So
no worries. I appreciate y'all having me.
All right. Well, listen, we are going to bring Brian back on, and Brian is going to talk about Feeding Frenzy Friday, and our sponsor for NoteSchool TV.
Well, he's not wrong. We're definitely going to at least mention our sponsor here. Our sponsor is Notes Direct and the Feeding Frenzy Friday. And for those of you who are not familiar, you can always check out our playlist, noteschool.com/FFF for Feeding Frenzy Friday, where each week we take a note from Notes Direct and we kind of break down the details to help you learn and master that level of due diligence and understanding. This week, we've got a very special case because we're going to take a note that we think people pass on because of one or two variables. And we're going to start to show you how to look at that same note a completely different way to help you start to, again, become a better or more of a master in the note business. And so make sure you're checking that out. Next week, we have a very special guest, Ryan Parsons, which some of you know, some of you don't know, but we're going to talk about why an investor might like notes. We're going to talk about the market cycle. Raising capital is going to be kind of the underlying theme. I think you'll really get a kick out of it. So please make sure you're joining us next Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time. And then again, if you need a little reminder, like this video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification. It'll remind you, hey, Ryan's going to be on the show this week. And you'll know to get involved. If you're wanting to kind of figure out what's next with Note School, go to noteschool.com/TV. Check it out there. There is a free ebook that you can actually download, as well as a live training that we've got up there for you. So if you want to check that out, definitely go to that link right there. If you're somebody who just needs help right away, like I can't wait, I'm in the middle of a deal, reach out to us by going to noteschool.com. Just click that contact us page or tab and fill out the information. We'll get right back with you and we'll go from there. We've got a little after party. Hang around with us. If you can stick around, awesome. We'll see you on the other side. For those of you who can't, we'll see you next week at 11:05 Central Time. Awesome. Well, we're here. How we doing?
Hey.
Oh,
And by the way, Brian, Jamila bought that note off of Notes Direct. So yay. Right?
I did.
That's absolutely right. And that's actually a good segue into one of the questions we had, because someone asked to pledge a note, which is the strategy that you used. Do I have to buy it first, meaning use my own money? Do I need $20,000, $30,000 to be able to do this? Or is there a way to use just your investors' funds to buy it? And if I remember correctly, I didn't hear anything about you writing a $30,000 check.
Nope. Honestly, you need to make sure you build rapport with your investors and that they understand that they not necessarily trust you. But what I wrote in the agreement that deposit had to come in first, and then it would, and then gave them a timeline on how the whole process was going to go. And so based on that, he understood that he wasn't going to get his check for another 3 months or so, or, you know, however I did the paperwork, but he understood that. So he as soon as he signed the paperwork, the promissory note and the pledge agreement, he wired it right on over, the whole 30,000. And then that's when I purchased the note for the 27.
I love it. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Eddie.
I think you could think in terms of, have you ever bought a house?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to write the check to buy the house, or did the lender provide the money to buy the house? Have you ever bought a car?
Yeah.
Right? Did you have to write a check for the car, or did the lender provide the money to buy the car? So think in terms of it's the same concept in this.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just another asset, right? And this is one of the things I think a lot of people don't understand about notes, is that a note is just a promise to pay, right? It's the paper side of real estate. Instead of getting the house that, you know, deteriorates over time, you know, you're getting a piece of paper that is backed by and secured by an asset worth more money. And so it's a completely different way to do things. But man, the note business is definitely something to entertain. So Eddie, why don't you tell us a little bit, because this was an interesting use case for a pledge. What are some other ways when someone, you know, as we've obviously seen, who is newer to the business, is doing this? What are some other ways that a pledge is a great strategy to use in the note business?
You know, we talk about buying the whole loan and selling a partial, right? We've talked about that on numerous occasions. That's something, believe it or not, my father-in-law and his partner and kind of invented that whole idea in the business 40 years ago, right? So we've done that a lot. It works really well with retirement accounts. But really, I told my audience the other night, I just got a paid in full note that I signed about 5 years ago for almost $12 million. So I borrowed $12 million against notes. And over time, I worked it. And we just paid that loan off less than a month ago. Well, I mean, listen, me, like everybody else, that's where I'm at today. But I started out just like Jamila, where I had one asset or one deal or one, you know, the cool thing about this is that investor, quite honestly, that investor has more money, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's just an icebreaker to further deals, and it's an icebreaker to do it. So, you know, people kind of forget you can do that. The mortgage banking industry operates, we're borrowing money against notes. Mm-hmm. In fact, the largest bank in the United States that loans money to mortgage lenders is actually based here in Dallas-Fort Worth, Brian, where you and I live. Texas Capital Bank.
Yeah.
They have one client they lend $2 billion to a month. It's pretty big, huh?
Yep.
So it is common in the business. It's, you know, and of course, Jamila got that. When we explained it to her and kind of went through it a time or two, she's like, okay, well, it's just an asset. I'm just borrowing money against an asset, you know, and your lender is secured, right?
It's secured. Yep.
So
it's almost double secured. It's almost double security for my investor, honestly. Yeah. Because they have the pledge on the promissory note. On top of the promissory note, it's pledged with the actual note. So it almost layers and makes it a very, very secure investment for my investor. Yeah.
Yeah. And since you are the investor kind of on the back side, you're waiting for the future, you have an interest in making sure this goes well. And so there is this further level of risk mitigation with your passive investor who's, oh, I'm nervous. What if something goes wrong? You're saying, well, look, I don't get my money until the end. So I'm going to make sure that this goes in the right direction.
And, you know, Jamila did something that was very smart as well. Smart lady is that she took a couple of payments out of that upfront money and she put them to the side that she could continue to make payments if something were to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. A little cushion.
Yep. A little bit.
So when you made a little, you know, you just over borrowed. You didn't really make profit.
Right.
Those are loan proceeds. Those aren't taxable proceeds.
That's right.
Right. But you over borrowed a little bit and you took a little bit of that money, call it $600, and you just put it in an account, and you just said, in case the customer who owes money on the real estate note doesn't make his payment, I can make a payment to my lender, and all of a sudden he's not nervous, and we're just life's a little smoother, right? Is that your thought?
I think we may have lost her for a minute.
I thought it was me.
It is you, Eddie.
Well, y'all see these comments? She's a rock star, man.
Yeah,
she is. Yeah.
I mean, like people, we got to have her on again. I mean, she is like,
yeah. I think what's really important for people to understand too is that, you know, sometimes you hear someone's success story about, oh, I did this deal. Like here's a good example. Someone like Eddie Speed gets on a show like this and said, oh yeah, I did a $1 million deal, or I did 10,000 transactions. Like, of course, you're Eddie Speed. You can make that happen. But when you take somebody who's like, I was never in the note business, I didn't know anything about it. It got introduced to me. And once I learned this, all I had to do was go out and take action, apply this information that I've learned. And then, hey, we're back up and running. And now she's doing deals, and you could be in that same spot, right? This really can be simple with a little bit of help.
The gremlins get you, Jamila?
I'm telling you, I'm glad it happened in the after party and not during the other. I was like, gosh, what happened? I'm back now. Okay.
And guys, you know, the great thing about this is that Jamila is starting her own little bank, right? Because she does 1, then she does 2, then she does 10, right? As a friend of ours says, I'll take 10. And all you're doing is just, well, let's go ahead and tell them the fancy word for this, right? This pledge is really called a hypothecation. Eddie's going to spell that for you in just a minute, guys. But all you're doing is you're just using somebody else's money, and you get to make the arbitrage, the difference between the two, right? And the bigger the deal, Jamila, the more that arbitrage becomes, where you, on some deals, it's a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 deal. Your piece could be, instead of $40 a month, it could be $250 or $300 a month.
Yeah. Yeah. And the beauty of it, I think what I love most about it's a win-win-win-win for everybody. Everybody wins in the deal. You know, yet no, they're not getting probably what I'm getting, but I'm the active investor. You're the passive investor. So, you know, it's a lot of different elements to that. But at the end of the day, everybody wins when it comes to notes. And that's what I love about the business.
One thing I was going to make a comment, because I know a good many of Martha's investors. And people kind of think, if I'm going to go borrow money from an investor, he's a passive investor, or I'm going to go like sell them a partial, whatever vehicle, whatever way you paper it, right? What most people don't realize is these are smart, sophisticated people. A lot of them have owned rentals. Mm-hmm. What they have is they don't have access to deal flow, and they don't want access to deal flow.
Good point.
Jamila, they want access to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're putting it together. You're providing an easy path, and it lets them sleep at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. The knowledge reduces the risk in the transaction, and they don't want to take the time to necessarily go get it, especially when you already have it. Let's find a way to work together, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely been the key. That has definitely been the key.
And you know, a lot of people get a little bit freaked out, Jamila. But well, how many? You know, that they ask you, how many deals have you done? That nobody, you know, the deal spoke for itself, right? The house is worth $43,300. This guy's loaning $30,000 against it. That's a 25% loan to value ratio, or 20. You know, yeah. So I mean. And ultimately, the house is the security against the loan when you look at it, right? So,
yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So anyway,
well, Jamila, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really great and encouraging for a lot of people, as we see in the comments, to kind of just hear from somebody that, you know, it's very relatable. You know, you're somebody who's just gotten started here recently, and you're already going out and taking action. So that's really cool. That it's nice to see somebody put some money in their pocket. It's obviously got to feel good. And so, man, we really appreciate you coming on the show. And for everybody who jumped on, it's always good to see you. Thanks for saying hi. For those of you who are asking about what website I was talking about, it was noteschool.com/TV. That is that's the place you could go if you want to learn a little bit more, even of what Jamila was talking about. So we'll see you guys next week. Otherwise, have a great weekend, and we'll catch you soon.